All right, let's get right to it. Welcome to a truly exclusive masterclass explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into the high stakes, absolutely high reward world of elite property management. What we're unpacking today isn't some generic run of the mill guide. No, we are breaking down the Ikundayo blueprint. If you've ever looked up at those towering modern office buildings or sprawling luxury estates and thought, how on earth are these actually managed behind the scenes? Well, you are exactly where you need to be. We're going to look at the precise structures, the discipline, and the tech it takes to not just own property, but to literally command it. So grab your coffee, get dialed in, and let's elevate how we think about real estate. I really want you to let this core philosophy sink in for a second. Real estate success is not just about ownership. It is about management, security, risk control, and executive vision. You know, for way too long, people have pushed this idea that getting your name on a title deed is the finish line. Honestly, it's not. It's barely even the starting line. True wealth isn't just something you acquire and forget about. It's something you have to fiercely protect and strategically grow. The Ikundayo approach basically tells us that a property without rock-solid, layered security and visionary management is, well, it's just a giant liability waiting to happen. Moving from a passive owner to an active executive, that's exactly what separates the amateurs from the absolute titans of the industry. So here is our game plan for today's briefing. We'll hit 5 key areas. 1. The executive vision. 2. Mastering tenant acquisition. 3. Physical security and biometrics. 4. Cyber defense and risk control. And finally, number 5, scaling your empire. Let's jump in. Kicking things off with Section 1, the executive vision. This is all about shifting your mindset from just being an owner to becoming a true leader. This right here is where the entire transformation begins. Look, before we even start nerding out over digital dashboards or fancy biometric locks, we have to completely rewire how you view your portfolio. The whole foundation of the Ikundayo blueprint demands a massive paradigm shift. You absolutely have to establish professional systems, strategic management, and disciplined executive leadership. Because when you're dealing with modern African real estate environments, think luxury estates, high-end corporate spaces, you literally cannot rely on guesswork. It just doesn't work. These kinds of assets demand a highly structured, almost military-like approach to wealth protection. You've got to stop looking at your portfolio as just a bunch of buildings. It's a sophisticated corporation. And you're the CEO of the whole shebang. Every single move has to be rooted in structure, extreme preparation, and strategic foresight. Moving right along to Section 2, Mastering Tenant Acquisition. Let's talk about the human element of management. So, the make-or-break moment really comes down to how you handle the tenant lifecycle. Let's look at a quick case study. Say, locking down a high-value corporate tenant for a luxury penthouse. Step 1 is definitely not your run-of-the-mill credit check. We're talking strategic vetting. This is a deep dive, looking at behavioral and financial analysis to really understand their corporate standing. Then, Step 2, professional onboarding. For our executive tenant, day 1 isn't just handing over a set of keys. It's a totally seamless, digitally integrated welcome experience through a dedicated portal. It sets a massive standard of luxury and professionalism right out of the gate. And Step 3, high-level retention protocols. Look, it costs way more to find a new tenant than to keep a stellar one, right? So we anticipate what they need before they even realize they need it. We deliver a standard of living so unshakable that the idea of leaving is just unthinkable. It's actually kind of wild when you compare the amateur approach to the Ikundayo standard for that penthouse tenant. The amateur landlord, they're out there relying on gut feelings for vetting, only ever fixing things when a pipe inevitably bursts, and communicating through chaotic text messages at 2 a.m. But an executive manager? Totally different ballgame. They are entirely data-driven. Their maintenance is predictive. They're out there servicing the HVAC systems before the tenant even notices a drop in temperature. And communication, it's all cleanly routed through unified, highly professional portals. It's basically about eliminating all that landlord chaos and replacing it with rigorous, hyper-systematic property maintenance. All right, Section 3, Physical Security and Biometrics. Time to build that impenetrable fortress. What's absolutely fascinating here is just how thoroughly modern infrastructure wipes out the old ways of doing things. I mean, traditional security meant relying on rusty physical keys that anyone can copy, and those basic grainy cameras that only ever show you what you've already lost. Not exactly reassuring, right? But the Ikundayo standard, the modern infrastructure, it demands biometric access. We're talking fingerprints, retinal scans, facial recognition, the works. It uses intelligent perimeter fencing and cinematic quality 4K 24/7 CCTV. The goal is to make sure every single entry and exit is explicitly logged, verified, and restricted to authorized folks only. Seriously, your property literally transforms into an impenetrable fortress. Now, to actually run a fortress like that, you need a centralized brain, which brings us to the Core Security Operations Center, or the SOC. Picture this, a room washed in high-contrast blue and gold lighting, with these massive, dramatic screens streaming live CCTV feeds. You've got biometric access logs flowing in real time, digital overlays tracking movement across these modern estates, and it's all monitored through incredibly sleek Ekondio TV-branded systems. I know, it sounds like something straight out of a spy movie, but this high-tech command center isn't science fiction at all. It's the bare minimum baseline for elite wealth protection today. It gives you absolute, crystal-clear visibility over your entire physical portfolio, all from one ultra-secure location. Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, Cyber Defense and Risk Control, how we manage crises before they even escalate. Because a modern fortress doesn't just exist in the real world, right? It lives in the digital realm too, so we have to talk about invisible threats. Let's actually run a rapid emergency response drill to see exactly how this plays out in real time. Minute 0. A threat, digital or physical, is flagged by the system. Boom. Minute 2. Automated lockdown protocols instantly fire off, isolating the affected network or that specific zone of the estate. Minute 5. The command center is already assessing the true scope of the breach, using live data and eyes-on cameras. And by minute 10, executive resolution. The threat is completely neutralized, systems are back online, and the portfolio is 100% secure. 10 minutes. That is the speed of professional, highly structured crisis management. There's zero panic, there's only protocol. And that brings us to a super important concept we need to define: risk control, the proactive integration of cyber defense and physical security to protect digital systems and physical assets seamlessly. Because in the Ekondio framework, you just can't separate the digital stuff from the physical stuff anymore. Think about it. A hacker who breaches your smart building network can pop open the front doors just as easily as some guy with a crowbar. So, true executive management means your cyber defense protocols and your physical security teams aren't siloed. They operate as one single unified shield. That is how you maintain absolute unbroken control over your portfolio. Let's turn the corner to Section 5, Scaling Your Property Empire. Time for some financial intelligence and executive decision-making. Okay, so we've locked down the perimeter, fortified the network, and secured the absolute best tenants. Now we get to the really fun part, the peak of the blueprint pyramid: growth. This setup brilliantly illustrates what high-level financial intelligence actually looks like in practice. As an executive, you aren't just squinting at boring bank statements, you're analyzing dynamic digital dashboards. Take a look at this ideal executive allocation. 60% of your income is locked in as core revenue. Then 25% is immediately routed back into security and maintenance reinvestment because, let's face it, your fortress needs constant upgrades. And the real kicker? That 15% isolated strictly as scaling capital. Sticking to this kind of strict visual financial discipline means your current operations naturally fund your future growth, all without ever over-leveraging the assets you already have. So the big question: how do we actually hit the gas and accelerate that growth? Well, the keys to scaling rely on literally everything we've talked about today. You swap out guesswork for data-driven decision-making. You use those high-tech command centers to manage 10 properties with the exact same effort it takes to manage one. You establish a unified brand identity, whether that's subtle Ekondio embroidery on an executive's wardrobe or sleek branding on estate signage, because that builds massive institutional trust. But above all else, strict operational discipline. You scale by building a perfect system, and then you just replicate it over and over again, all across glowing city skylines. As we start to wrap up, I really want to challenge you with one final underlying thought. Are you just an owner, or are you an executive? Look, this explainer was honestly designed to make you a little uncomfortable with the status quo. If you're out there still managing properties out of a spiral notebook, handing out physical metal keys, and just blindly reacting to maintenance fires as they pop up, well, you're an owner. An executive, on the other hand, commands infrastructure, leverages cutting-edge biometrics, anticipates risk before it happens, and aggressively drives scale. The choice of which one you're going to wake up and be tomorrow, that is entirely up to you. Build your systems, secure your assets, scale your empire. That, my friends, is the masterclass. That is the Ekondio blueprint in action. Thank you so much for joining me for this executive explainer. Now, it's time to take these principles, apply this level of extreme discipline to your own portfolios, and totally transform your vision of what is possible. Welcome to the future of real estate with Ekondio TV.